Thank you for your attention. Welcome to Parliament House. I'm Alexander Wilesman. I'm the Parliamentary Liaison Officer to the member for Lismore, Janelle Saffin. I'll soon introduce Janelle to the lectern, but in the first instance, we'll acknowledge that on these, their lands of the First Peoples. It is with profound respect to acknowledge the spirit of the elders past, today's elders and emerging leaders. To the east, west, north and south, surrounded by the great oceans, seas, rivers, creeks and streams, under the southern stars and the celestial heavens, always and forever acknowledging that they continue to be the custodians, and having nurtured these lands for over 60,000 years, they are and forever will be the old continuous culture of Mother Earth. I invite Ms. Janelle Saffin, the member for Lismore, to the lectern. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander, for acknowledgement to country. And tonight's event is, as the speaker stated today in question time, poignant. It's called Through the Heart, and the speaker's here with us now. And the Premier's here, Minister Ben Franklin, Minister for the Arts, for Tourism, for Aboriginal Affairs and Youth. Have I got it all, Ben? And also Minister Roberts is here. My parliamentary colleagues are here from right across the Parliament, and because this is something that everybody supports, and and please put up your hand, my parliamentary colleagues, and I will put your hands up please, because people like to know and see. Yep, thank you. And I'll mention Tamara Smith. Tamara is on her way if I can't see her, but I know she'll be here. And also she's a member for Ballina, so she's my close colleague here. And Sue Higginson, who is from Lismore and is a member of the Legislative Council. So I just wanted to mention that they were here. And this photographic exhibition, it's both sad and sweet, and it shows people, our local people, our community, it shows them at their most harrowing in some ways, but also at their best, because it shows them that despite what happened, they're in control. They're doing things, they're reshaping, and they're rebuilding their lives. And yes, they might be grieving and might be in a degree of shock, but they're there and it's powerful. And Jacqueline Wagner, whom I'll come to, the photographer, she's just a fantastic photographer and she's able to do that. I'll just say a few words before I hand over to Jacqueline and then the Premier, and then we'll all go and re-look at the exhibition again. But what I would like to say is that our community suffered this year. We were hit by a flood, and I say it was akin to an inland tsunami. I know the whole state is under flood in some way and in some areas. I acknowledge that. I acknowledge what other people are going through at the moment, but this one was like an inland tsunami. And it was just different to what we've seen before. And, you know, it's our wild weather and our changing climate. It's really sort of wreaked a trail of destruction and devastation, but our community has risen to the challenge. And it's our community who rescued community, who saved community, and it's our community who's leading the recovery. And as their representative, I have to respond to their calls and needs. I do that the best I can, and I've sought to have government back us in. And that's what I need to do for our community. I acknowledge here with us local people who are in the photos. And sometimes we talk about flood victims, but we're flood survivors and we're thriving as well. We have to survive and thrive, and we'll continue to do that together. We have Vicky Youngbury here, and Vicky, your daughter's with you, so put your hands up, it's okay. I know. Marion Conroe, where's Marion? And Marion has her cousin with her as well. And where's Moondy? Where's Moondy? Moondy's here, and Moondy has her sister, Moondy Nelson. And we have Katie Callista. Katie's here, and with her son Jordan. And we have Chaz Glover. Where's Chaz? Chaz is over here. Chaz is in the photograph, but he's also working here. And so it's really, what I want to say is that having everybody here in these photos, like Jacqueline took it upon herself, as so many people in our community have done as volunteers, and thought, a woman of great compassion, but also great skill in photography, she took it upon herself to go out and knock on doors where doors were standing. And a lot of them weren't. So she sort of knocked on doors, yeah, or just said, look, I'm here. And she'll tell you that story, but it's a beautiful story. And also Jenny Dell. Jenny Dell has penned the words. She put, another wonderful woman, a journalist, she put her skill with the pen and did the captions for the photos. So I want to acknowledge Jenny too. And I did acknowledge Chaz Glover, himself a subject of the exhibition, but he used his skill in installing, as I'm told, that's the formal word, installing, is that right, Chaz? Yes, installing the photographs. I call it mounting, putting up, whatever, but I know there's a formal title. I'd also like to acknowledge Heath Gilmore, Catherine Naylor from the Sydney Morning Herald for their interest, their continued coverage of our area, and Heath for your exquisite coverage of Jacqueline's work that included your interviews with people in the photographs and all the other work that you've done. Catherine, for your interest in the community and the community-led recovery. And sorry I didn't call you back, I was out in Torrington the other Friday. I apologise when you rang me about the Resilient Homes Fund announcement. And James O'Brien is here. And James, many of you will know from ABC, James grew up in Lismore, so he has a continuing interest in Lismore and is recording a lot of what's happening tonight. And look, there's so many people here I recognise, just so many that I can see. Thank you for being here and all the locals. And Brett Adlington, Brett's the Director of Museums and Galleries New South Wales. And thank you, Brett, for being here. And Brett's actually a Lismore local, he's a local, okay, so, but he works here like a lot of people, he's here, and we've already lent on him to try and store these until we have the big exhibition next year. And Rebecca Batista and Isaac and all of our kids, you're all here, so welcome Rebecca, because I know Jacqueline does the photographs for our kids. And Jacqueline came and saw me, and we sat down one Saturday for about 2.5 hours, I think, in the office, and talked about this happening. And as I sometimes do, like go down the hill on one ski, I said, we can do this. I didn't know how. I said, but this can happen. And then I have to say that I then approached the Premier and Ben Franklin, so Dominic Perrottet and Ben Franklin, and said, can you help back this in to make sure that we can do this? And I acknowledge and thank them here tonight because both of them did that, so thank you to both of you. And Ben is a local, although he probably spends a lot of time on the road now, but he's one of the locals. Look, it's my absolute pleasure now to hand over to Jacqueline Wagner, and you'll hear her tell her story, and no one can tell it like Jacqueline. That's just the way that she does it, and then we'll hear from the Premier. Thank you, everybody. And welcome, Jacqueline.
Thanks. Okay. Well, I'm just going to speak from the heart. I love Lismore. I'm not the only one. And I wasn't here for the flood. My daughter was expecting a baby. We had to be at the Gold Coast. We left the Wednesday before. She had a boy, Tommy, by the way, the day after. We came back and we had family and friends who were affected. We joined the Mud Army, and I could sense there was amazing adrenaline. It was like a funeral where people bring the sandwiches and the flowers, and it was busy, and I knew photographically that there was something I would do, but I knew it would come to me. I didn't overthink it. But by the third week, I could see people were wanting to reconnect with their homes. They couldn't live in them, but they just wanted to be there. They wanted to, you can't walk away from something you own either. You know, you have to deal with it. So I woke up one morning and I thought, I've got it. I know what I'm going to do. And I'm going to define it, because there were rescuers, there were businesses affected, there were tenants, and I defined it as people who owned their own home, and were wanting to reconnect, loosely. So I went out and I thought, okay, here goes. The first lady I came across lived in Engine Street. Her name was Susan Johnson, and I went, I'm actually not sure where this is going to go. I know it's important. I will work really hard to make something happen, and it will be somewhere really nice. And she went, I get it. And I thought, right, I'm off. So for between 3 and 16 weeks, I went out most days, and you could see where someone was at home. The car was there. There was some sort of activity. I had one camera, one lens that I used, a notepad and a pen. And I guess because I've had probably a history in the area, because I was with the Northern Star and probably had a reputation or whatever, I definitely drew on that. And they went, oh yeah, of course. And my hair wasn't grey then, so but that was fine. There were 2 people who just went, not aggressively, I want to, but I can't do it. One got back to me, and that was fine. So all of those people said, I get it, I understand, and I promised them that I would actually keep them in the loop, that it would be their exhibition. And I have done that. So I've got a group email, and if I've given a talk to a Rotary Club, or there's something, they know there's going to be something on ABC radio tomorrow morning. Thank you to James. So I've actually kept them in the loop. So I probably got halfway through, and a friend of mine, Dr. Chris Ingle, rang me to say, how are you going? And I said, this is a project I'm working on. And he said, oh, I've actually got the mayor staying with me. He's lost his business and his house. He's going to Sydney. He's going to see the Premier. Why don't you put some photos together? I went, yay, okay, I'll do that. I couldn't have it done in Lismore. I was going to see my sister in the Southern Highlands. I rang Mittagong Officeworks and said, I need some photos putting together. I had a night to do it, spiral bind, and I just need them in a day. And they went, we can do that. So I had 3 copies done. One for the Premier, one for the Prime Minister, and one for myself. It was done so quickly, I'm a little bit embarrassed, but there were a few typos in it. Photographers, they always just look at the pictures. But and when I spoke, anyway, so I had them done. I brought them back on the plane, and I had to have them done really quickly. Met with the mayor, who I'd never met before, and he gave you a copy. And then it was only a matter of, I don't know exactly how many days, but within a week, the Premier, I got a letter, and I just sat there and I read it 3 or 4 times, and I thought, he's actually really looked at these. I knew it wasn't I just knew it wasn't, and I could tell, and I thank you so much for that, because that actually threw me into the next stage. And I think there's a lesson in that for everyone as well. So I emailed everyone and told them that. when I spoke to people, I didn't interview them, and I wasn't after sensational stories, so it was very organic. And there were some people who were at home, and there were some who were hung off gutters, and there were some who had left, and those who were away and from afar had to wonder what on earth was happening to their home. And so the images in here have they're simple, they're not text heavy, they have their quotes, and they have just beautiful stories that paint the whole picture. And there's humour in there as well. And I guess because of what happened that night in February, there's a new reality. Like it was just, and it is a new reality. It's never ever going to be the same. And I know people have been shedding a tear tonight, and it's 25 images out of a 100 image exhibition, which is going to be here next year. I got the paperwork to say it would be May. And every single person in that I photographed will be in it. I know there were people who were disappointed that they weren't in the 25, but like one girl sent me an email and said, is my photo going to be used? I just think it would help with my healing. Yeah, anyway, look, to all the people who said, and they all said yes, and all the wonderful people I've been surrounded by in the community, to the Premier, to Janelle, this is really huge. The other thing is, historically, it's a body of work that in 40 years, 50 years time, I have all the details, I have where they live. I'm not going to give them out willy-nilly, but in terms of actually looking at how the landscape is going to change, and it is going to change, and people have wavered between wanting to stay, wanting to go. A lot of them said to me, oh, but I don't want to go, I probably don't fit the criteria. There was no criteria. Whatever you felt, yeah. Anyway, that's probably it. Here we are in a beautiful place, and we haven't finished yet. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacqueline. You're a wonderful photographer, but a wonderful person as well. So we're very lucky to have you in our community, and it's now my pleasure to invite the Premier, Dominic Perrottet, to come and speak. And I've joked a few times in the media that Dom and I became closer than we ordinarily might have through this massive event in Lismore. And he's been no stranger to our community, Lismore and the Northern Rivers, and I welcome him to say a few words with us.
Thank you, Janelle. And before I get to the exhibition of the wonderful photos that Jacqueline's put together, I want to begin by talking about the great people of Lismore. And I want to welcome those who have come down to Sydney today. When that flood hit, from the first thing when I was able to get onto the ground in Lismore the first time, I would say it's probably the most confronting thing I have ever seen in my entire life. And the devastation, in terms of the physical devastation on the ground, was tremendous and something that I will never forget. And going in and driving in, we could finally get into Lismore and just seeing, from fridges in trees that were so high up in the sky, to see just the personal belongings and all the debris from street to street, from street to street. It did not end. And to Janelle's point, what overwhelmed all of that was the spirit of the people. And going from shop front to shop front, from home to home, and seeing people and meeting people who had lost absolutely everything was, yes, personally confronting, but the strength that I saw in our people at that time, I will never forget. And there was criticism, as many of you'd be aware at the time, given the substantial event that it was, that the emergency services response was too slow, that the Defence Force had not been able to get in, or had not been called, and we dealt with those issues at a political level. And that was obviously seen as a negative. And it was seen as a negative that our people in the Northern Rivers, and particularly in the area of Lismore, didn't have that support and went straight out themselves, which they said they shouldn't have done, to help other people. Well, I don't see that as a negative at all. I see that as one of the most beautiful and wonderful things about the Australian culture and the Australian people. And there is something special about what happened in Lismore at the start. And the sad thing for me was that was lost. That was never actually spoken about through the media at the time, because that is something that we should have embraced. Because when I went from, whether it was in Lismore to Ballina to Tweed to Coracida, all those communities, people, person after person, just spoke of enormous efforts of bravery in a very humble way, where they put their own life at risk to help their neighbour, to leave their own homes that were under threat to go and save other people's lives, to get into boats in very difficult circumstances when even the emergency services people were saying don't do it. They did it because they had to look out for each other. And that is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, and I will ever see for the rest of my life. So to the people of Lismore, thank you for what you've done, and for the example that you've set our great country. Because if that spirit can continue and gets handed down to the next generation, I think our country will only grow greater into the future. So from devastation comes great good, and that is what we saw. Now to Jacqueline. So I remember that meeting. In fact, I'm interested that, was it Chris who said he had a meeting with me? I don't think they did have a meeting with me. They just barged in the office. In fact, it was Steve. It was Steve. Yeah, it was Steve. Yeah, Steve Creed. I was actually in another meeting, so the poor people who were sitting on the couches just got interrupted. And in came Sam and said, "You've got to look at this. I'm delivering this specifically for you." And when I went through those pictures, whilst the other people just sat there, I went through those pictures. In fact, I showed them. I took them through every single picture whilst they waited. What struck me about these photos is that I had not seen anything that captured for me what it really was like on the ground in those early days. And I often said in the aftermath of the event that one of the difficult things was, particularly for the people of Sydney, to grasp and appreciate the devastation, the damage, the pain and suffering that had occurred, was that it could not really be captured, and it was not captured on the evening news. I don't think the papers could capture it. But when Steve brought your photos in, all together as one, and went through every single one of them, it was incredibly moving and touching, and it brought me straight back to those very early days. Not only did you capture through these photos, in my view, the devastation, but you captured the pain. But I also think you captured the hope. And when you said at the end there that these pictures and these photos will stand the test of time, and they help people move on, well, that's very, very special. So as soon as I saw those photos, I wanted to write to you because it just captured everything for me. And I think the impact that you've had for that local community is tremendous. So well done. And we want, as a government and from the people of New South Wales, for that to be promoted more, because I want people to understand two things, not just the devastation, but most importantly, the spirit, the strong and enormous spirit of the people of Lismore that comes through. And that's why Ben and I, through our discretionary grants, are giving $10,000 each to you in terms of continuing to promote the work that you do and the photos, so that more people, so that more people across our state appreciate that. and have a deeper understanding of the event that occurred, but also, as I said, a deeper understanding of how good the people of Lismore are. And the final thing I'll say, I was up there just recently with the Prime Minister, where we announced the buyback scheme for homes, of which South Lismore particularly, I think, understand many people here are from South Lismore.
East, South, North.
Oh, East, everyone's here. Okay, you're all here. I'm not discriminating against you, you're all here. What was great to see was Lismore coming back to life. And the benefit for me of being up there a number of times sporadically has been able to see the improvement and the growth of Lismore happening. And I see every time I go back there, I'm seeing not just a stronger people, but a stronger city and a stronger town. And to see so many shop fronts and businesses now reopening in time for Christmas, and the pain being replaced by so much hope, as particularly as we come into Christmas, I think is absolutely amazing and wonderful. So Jacqueline, well done. Whatever we can do to help continue that story. Thank you for what you have done. The initiative to go out and take these photos and tell the story of Lismore, I think, will make a significant difference to our state. And finally, to the people of Lismore, you're the best, you're the greatest people I've met. What you've gone through and where you are today is absolutely amazing. So these photos are all about you and your great spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perrottet. We'll invite the Premier, the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and other portfolios, and the member for Lismore, Ms. Wagner, to go and lead you into the exhibition. You do that. You're really good.
And it was when she said, and I was like, that is,
My sister washed a lot of mud off a lot of things and saved a lot of mud. Then have it up. We have that.
It's down in the backyard.
Where's Marion? Marion.